McElhenney time to review the safety protocols and request, and then we can always continue to monitor and make a decision down the road. Mr. Heinrich, Mr. McElhenney, I know you're working together. Is there anything else to add to the committee and to Mr. Harley for their information?
Mike, let me jump in just a moment.
Yes,
you're
sir.
Talking about next year, you're talking about 21, 22, not 21.
Yeah, here's what's going on, sir. Okay. We are talking administratively, not resuming the process till 21, 20, the next school year, which would be 21, 22. However, our partners are asking, can they revisit here in January? And what I'm worried about, sir, is I can't tell you with certainty that things will get better by January. And I'm afraid that if some kid would go through this process and put themselves in the place to come here only to be told no. So I'd like to stay steadfast. That would be my recommendation, respectively.
When would the kids be coming?
How about I turn it over to Mr. McElhenney to answer some of those questions? Is that okay, Mr. Harlan?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. McElhenney.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. Summed it up very well. There are two requests, one of which is to be able to accept students for the beginning of the second semester. But like you, I also feel that our conditions and parameters are unknown at this time, and that if we were to resume that, that would be for the beginning of next school year, the 21-22 school year. I'd feel more comfortable about being able to, gauge and evaluate the situation. And those students would be coming over the summer, I believe no later than August, to participate in the exchange program that we have, which has been very successful and beneficial not only for those students, but our school community, in as much as learning about other cultures and other peoples.
Thank you, Mr. McElhenney. So, Mr. Harley, the question is the committee okay with us putting a hold for the second semester of this school year and revisiting for next school year? Our partner is requesting us to reconsider that and look at January. But again, sir, our position is we just couldn't tell you with certainty what January will look like as we're just in November, sir.
Let's take a quick poll of the board of the committee members. Uta,
yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What do you think?
I definitely think January is way too soon, and we'd be taking a huge risk. And I think we can explore August, but I hate to say we're gonna have to see how things progress, but I'm not optimistic. Our numbers in Indiana County are certainly going way in the wrong direction over the past week. So, and I would hate to have a student come here and put them at risk, but I think we can start the conversation about the 21-22 school year.
Okay, Tamara?
I agree with Uta.
And we have Cinda. No, I'm sorry. Tammy, are you there?
I agree with Uta and Tamara. I think that it's just way too soon for January.
Okay, I agree with the committee members on this, Mike. Also noting that the COVID is surging in Europe, and it just seems like we're stringing kids along. I think we go ahead and recommend that the board doesn't allow this to happen this year.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next on item, Mr. Harley, what we have is a senior high math curriculum update and program adoption that's going to be presented by Mr. Cochran, Mr. Heinrich. And just if I can kind of set the tone a little bit, this is long overdue, but almost a decade in the making. And the math department's been very good to working with us as we've been pushing off as we had some other needs coming down the road. So at this point, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Cochran, if you're okay with that, Mr. Harley. And they'll go through and talk about the revisions, what exactly they're looking for, and what associated costs are. Is that okay, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Heinrich?
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Cochran has prepared a short presentation for you. As Mike said, it has been almost a decade. It was 8 years ago the last time we updated the senior high math curriculum. It's been overdue. They were on the agenda over the past few years. However, they kept getting bumped for things that took priority. So I'm going to share my screen here, Randy, if you can stop sharing yours. And then I'll turn it over to Steve and we'll Can everybody see that? Wait, hold on. I'm I'm making it bigger too, so give me 1 second. How's that?
Hey.
We can see, sir.
That's
All
awesome.
right. All right. Well, then, without further ado, Mr. Steve Cochran is speaking for the math department.
All right, good evening, everyone. As Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Vukic said, this has been a multi-year process for us in the math department at the high school, going through adopting new curriculum materials. And we're here tonight to present you some proposals that we have for Algebra 1 through pre-calculus, and then also for our AP Calculus courses tonight. In future meetings, we'll probably be coming back to you with a pre-algebra text that we want to adopt for next year, as well as AP statistics. What I want to do first is I just want to kind of recap a little bit of the data that we've looked at over the last couple of years. This first slide that we have has performance data, and this is as reported on the PA Future Ready Index and our school performance profile. If you look at the top there, there's a table with our Keystone Scores for Algebra 1 over the last several years there, and you can kind of see they're kind of all over the place a little bit. We've gone from a low with a 65.76% proficiency rate in 2014-15 to as high as in the 2015-16 school year and 2017-18, we had numbers over 82%. So, as we look at that, we certainly are concerned with that number, especially if ultimately this becomes something that is a graduation requirement, or at least is a part of those graduation requirement components. The one thing that we still are, feeling good about at this point, if you see down below there from the Future Ready Index, our algebra performance data is still good relative to PA. Certainly we want to continue to move in a positive direction. But if you take a look at the statewide average for Algebra 1 at this point, it's sitting at 45%, and we're at the 74% mark, still above where the statewide 2030 goal is. So, we feel good about that. But again, we want to continue to progress in a right direction, and, certainly look to surpass those numbers in future years here as we move forward. This second one, this is just a graph of our scores over the last 5 years. That's that data from the table on the previous slide. And as you can see, we're hovering around that same, 75 to 80% range here in the last 4 years, I would say, prior to that 2014-15. One of the big changes, I believe, that was the timing from 14-15 to 15-16 was when we went to a double period Algebra 1. For all of our kids that took algebra at the high school, we have, because of staff cuts and things like that, from last year to this year, had to kind of go back on that. So we'll see what this year's numbers hold. We're hoping that we've been able to do some additional things that will keep those in the same ballpark that they've been the last 4 years under that double period. But only time will tell with that. Okay, this next slide deals with growth data that we have. Again, this is from the PA Future Ready Index report and our school performance profile. We have, again, kind of been in that ballpark of that mid-70s to mid-80s percentage-wise in terms of meeting annual growth expectations. This is an area where we're probably a little weaker in comparison to the state. And again, we are working through a variety of different ways, and some of the things I'm going to show you tonight hopefully are going to help us move in a positive direction in terms of promoting some additional growth. Remember that this number is just solely based on the Keystone algebra exam and growth on that exam as far as where they're projected to score. But again, nonetheless, this is something that we're hoping to provide additional opportunities for all of our students to increase their performances in math. Okay, the proposed textbooks, as I said, we're here tonight to propose the purchase of Glencoe High School Math Program, which is published by McGraw-Hill for our Algebra 1 through our pre-calculus courses. Those are pictured down in the bottom right. Along with that program, we will have access to ALEX, which is something that we're currently using at the junior high with their program, and we have also used the last couple of years at the high school with Algebra 1. We will have the ability to, if this ends up getting approved at the board level, to utilize that program with our Algebra 2, our geometry, and our pre-calculus courses in addition to the Algebra 1 course. For our calculus courses, both our AP Calculus AB and BC, that's our Calc 1 and Calc 2 courses, would like to use the Calculus for AP course, which is published by Cengage Learning. Okay, changes to curriculum. If you look at this slide, first of all, I'll be impressed if anyone in the audience realizes why I included the graphics on this page, the mathematical graphics relative to the title of the slide. Anyone want to take a guess as to why that's on there? Oh, no.
Get him, Mr. Johnson. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Rates of change. Those are all rates of change, slopes, derivatives, those sorts of things. So, yes, Mr. Johnson, I'm extremely disappointed. At any rate, from a content perspective, really nothing has changed from math standards perspective in the state of Pennsylvania. Those PA state standards for those core courses of Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Calculus, as well as College Board standards that we follow for our AP Calculus courses, have essentially remained consistent. At some point, algebra is algebra and geometry is geometry and so on. From an instructional practices perspective, in terms of curriculum, change is continual. Even when we're not formally writing curriculum, teachers are always looking for better ways to deliver content to students and assess their progress, all in the name of promoting student growth and achievement in the math classroom. So while there is some mention, of course, in the curriculum writing of instructional practices, I'm sure that you all realize that that's something that's always a work in progress. That's never a etched in stone, this is what we're going to do for the rest of our lives from that perspective. Okay, first of all, I want to run through a couple of reasons why we chose the Glencoe program, why make the change to this program. Number one, it aligns well with the PA standards. And to be honest with you, most of the curricular materials that are out there in math, when you get to the secondary level, again, algebra is algebra. There are not people that are just sort of winging it and saying, well, we're not going to do lines this year in Algebra 1. And so it's pretty easy for us at the high school level to find materials that do align with state standards. And of course, this does. Glencoe, in our opinion, does a superior job of logically approaching the sequence of skill development, unlike many programs that are currently out there that we feel don't do a good job of helping students make connections in their learning, especially those at-risk type students or below grade level students. Our current resources, as mentioned already by Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Vukovic, are 8 years old. They are showing their wear. And of course, the last couple of years, we've actually lost our online access for kids to textbooks as well. They've just had the hard copies to work with. In the Glencoe program, through leveled exercise sets, application and practice worksheets, and what they call hot problems, higher order thinking problems for each section, we feel that this series allows for differentiation and instruction for us, serving both our struggling grade level and accelerated learners equally well. Between the textbook resources and additional practice made available through ALEX, this program, in our opinion, is far superior for struggling students than what we currently are using and really anything else that we've seen in our search. In addition, this Glencoe curriculum integrates seamlessly with the resources available on ALEX. Glencoe curriculum, just for your perspective, is something that's used in other districts in our area. I listed a few school districts in the area: Greater Latrobe, Hempfield area, Pine Richland, Norwin, and Mount Pleasant. And I believe when I talked to our rep from McGraw-Hill, Cannon McMillan, I believe, was the district she says also in the process of implementing these materials, hopefully for next year as well. We especially like, and this is something that's different than what we have now, we like the idea that the series includes a pre-calculus text, which provides that additional continuity across those 4 courses for kids. The ALEX program, some of you might be wondering, what is ALEX? He said that several times. ALEX gives us a way to diagnose where our students are at the beginning of the year in terms of their learning, and it provides them with additional practice along the way, meeting them where they are in their development and facilitating remediation and acceleration opportunities for our students. When they enter into a course, the kids take a diagnostic test right off the bat. And what that does then is it places them where they belong in terms of their background knowledge and so on, in terms of the objectives for the course. And then throughout the year, we have the ability to use that and allow kids to, spend some time working on things where they are. If there are kids that are struggling with some topics, this is a great time for remediation for some of those kids, to kind of go back and maybe revisit some of those things, maybe even from a prior course that is knowledge that they need to brush up on for things that we're doing. And then the last thing I have on this slide, online resources. We will regain that access to textbooks again, online textbooks, in addition to hard copy textbooks. And the ALEX program itself provides additional support for distance learning. And one little note that I might throw in there about the ALEX program. ALEX is actually something that a number of colleges have started to use as their placement test for kids, incoming freshmen. When they come in, they run them through a test through ALEX to kind of get an idea, gauge where they are mathematically. So, once again, this is something that's not just used in a few places, but used quite often, even at the higher education level. Okay, for the calculus course, why make the change to calculus for the AP materials? As the name of the text states, it's geared specifically towards the College Board's AP Calculus curriculum. There are lots of calculus books out there. There are a few that are geared towards helping prep the students for the AP tests that they'll take. And just the curriculum itself takes a slightly different twist sometimes in terms of focus than some of the courses that are taken at the college level. Although, of course, content-wise, it's pretty much the same. There are a few, like I said, little twists that they throw in there. The two authors, Ron Larson and Paul Battaglia, well respected in their field, and their materials are used by many districts nationwide. There are really two big calculus programs that are out there that are used in the AP program. We currently have been using the other one, and we kind of feel, because some of our scores for some kids have stagnated over the last couple of years, that we'd like to try something different with those kids and go this direction with the Larson materials. Each section in the book provides a wide range of practice problems from which to choose, as well as a few AP Calculus exam prep questions. Students will have access to online textbook resources that currently we don't have with our materials we're using now. A greater amount of the BC Calculus materials available within this textbook as opposed to our current text, which will provide better resources for that Calc 2 course that we have. And then struggling students have access to a site called calcview.com, which contains some videos of worked out solutions to several exercises within each of the sections.
Okay. I think that is the end of the presentation. I do want to mention to the members of the committee that in the agenda, I linked the work that the math department did at the high school with their revisions to the curriculum. There is not anything that's tremendously new, but they did update the curriculum to our new system of curriculum map. So that is all linked in there. And you next Monday we're going to ask that you approve those revisions along with the purchase of these materials, if you agree.
Thanks, Mr. Merrick. Mr. Harley, three things. Number one, the comments about the block scheduling. I'm very proud of the work that the teachers are doing in the way of block scheduling. I've seen a lot of schools do it, and all it really turns into is more time for homework or classwork. And in the case at the high school, what I'm proud to see is more time for engagement, remediation, and support. Secondly, I think you'd be glad to notice that we're close to our Tier 1 expectations of 80% proficiency. But also, most importantly, I appreciate Steve's comment about, look, we need to do more to grow our students. I value growth over achievement. And I'm glad to see Steve saying, look, we got to do more in the area of growing our kids to make sure that each kid can grow at their own, her own potential. So I think those are three things to take away. And Mr. Heinrich, the last thing I would just like to clarify for the board is these purchases, are you requesting out of this year's budget or next year's budget?
Well, there's a little bit of both. So we have an opportunity that if we approve this purchase this year, and we can put an order in by December, we can save a significant amount of money, 30% off of the Glencoe order, which would in effect pay for the calculus books, which is we plan to bring this to you in the spring. We accelerated the process because of this potential for savings. Because when you're spending, $200,000, 30% is quite a big chunk. So we are hoping to approve it now so that we can pay half now and half in the summertime.
Mr. Harley, I'll defer to you, sir, for any questions or comments from the committee.
Okay, we'll go to the committee first. Uta?
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm having technical issues. I'm just curious as to how do the textbooks interface with each other? Is it going to? Do you anticipate that it'll be a smooth transition from the one set of text by the one publisher to the other set?
Yes, I don't see any problem with that. We did have, for those of you that have been around long enough, you remember the last time that we did adopt textbooks, we had some issue when we went from Chicago math programs to what we currently use. And we had kids that felt like they had to almost double up back-to-back years on an Algebra 2 course. That should not be an issue at all. We feel like we can, day one next year, walk in to all of those courses and not have any issues in switching from what we're currently using to those.
Thank you.
Did I hear you say that these are what we're using in the junior high at this point?
No, the junior high is using something different. What they are using in the junior high is Alex. Mr. Harley, that's the software program, right? That's the extra program that was going to enable us to have kids to be able to remediate or work ahead in terms of sort of meeting where they are as we kind of go along.
Okay. Let me see. Tammy, do you have anything?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Tamara?
Nope, it all sounds good to me.
Any other board member want to jump in here?
Yes, please.
Oh, come on, Cindy.
A 30% discount makes me very suspicious. What is the purpose? Why did they say they're doing a discount? Are they coming out with a newer version next year?
Now, Mrs. Brode, this is just something, and I think this has to do with the COVID thing more than anything. Publishers are hurting in terms of business, and so basically, if we make a commitment, and it's not just this program, really, it could have been some of the other materials as well. If we make a commitment and order prior to December, by December, first week of December, and put 33% down, that's enabling us to get a discount. The reality is that discount is a good thing. There are a lot of things, though, if you look at the quote closely, there are a lot of things that most publishing companies will give you free. Many times the teacher's editions and things like that are things that are included regardless of discount. So, I don't hesitate at all with the program. I've asked the publisher if there is a new edition in the works, and if there were a new edition, we would hold off on that. She has assured me that at least as of today, there is no new edition of this textbook in the work. These are 2018 copyright at this point. So it is relatively new in terms of the publishing business.
Do we have any guarantee on the digital access to these books, or do they just randomly shut that off?
No, we have a 6-year subscription that we would be purchasing with this, and there is a guarantee that we would have access to that during that 6-year period.
We're on a 7-year cycle, though. So we end up with 2 years without access.
We should be able to fix that, Mr. Harley. My office is working on that as we speak to revise the curriculum revision cycle. So we should be okay.
Okay. Well, any other comments from the board members?
So I do have another question. Is there, I know with a lot of the math books, there's a workbook.
Tamara, can you speak up a bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. I know with a lot of the math books, there's a workbook that goes along with that. Do these books have something similar?
At the secondary, at the high school level, there's very rarely a workbook like that. That's more at the middle school, elementary level. At the high school, they do have some additional practice worksheet resources that we as teachers would have access to and could utilize those as we see fit. But really, at this level, there aren't consumable workbooks out there that we typically would use on an annual basis.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Tom?
Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, this is Walter. I have a question. I'm not sure whether it's for Steve or for Rob. It's been probably 4, 5, 6 years ago. There was a question came up on AP Calculus and AP Physics. And at the time, we were kind of struggling with numbers in both of those courses. And the way it was explained to the board at that time was that although AP Physics and AP Calculus carry different names and different course numbers, the material is essentially the same. As we all know, the close relationship physics has with calculus. And I think the idea was we would offer one in order to get the numbers up in that particular class. I'm not sure whether we're still doing that or not at this point. That would be the one question, though, that I would raise about the new calculus, whether there is an issue with numbers in your AP Physics and your AP Calculus, and whether they need to be, somehow blended as was suggested. And again, this was 4 or 5 years ago.
Walter, on that, I have a question. If we only offer AP Calculus and there's students who that's the math they need, there isn't another math that they can take, do we currently give them an option to not have to take the AP class because there isn't a regular calculus class they can take? And if we don't, is that something we can consider as we make this curriculum update?
All right, let me answer both of those because those are two different questions. First of all, Mr. Schroeth, I'm not sure what numbers you're talking about with AP Calculus, but we have not had any kind of an enrollment issue with AP Calculus. And I've been teaching it for about 13, 14 years. We routinely have multiple sections. We have 36 kids enrolled this year, which is a lower number than usual, but we're coming off of years where we had 50-some kids enrolled last year, 40-some the prior year. So the number of kids in AP Calculus hasn't been an issue in any recent times that I can remember. So I'm not sure what direction.
Let me kind of jump in there, Steve. I think the issue was with the AP Physics. They weren't having those good of numbers. And the question was when they were, I believe, and don't hold me to this, but I believe that the class sizes there were like 6, 7 students at a time. And the question was, can we meet their needs some other way in trying to get the AP Physics without having to have a separate section just for that class? And the suggestion then was, well, you could do AP Calculus as a substitute for that. And so that's the question I'm raising.
Now that curriculum is entirely, well, first of all, one's a science class and one's a math class, and while they are certainly related, and the teaching of physics is much easier with calculus as opposed to not having calculus, as far as a math background, there's no way that those courses could be taught under the same, within the same course itself.
Okay, then, perhaps my understanding, and I'll grant you maybe my understanding is incorrect, but apparently there were 2 different AP Physics courses, one that was calculus based and one that wasn't. And I think that was what they were kind of trying to play around with in order to meet those needs.
Okay, yeah, Mr. McElhaney, do you maybe have more information on those numbers?
Yeah, there's Calculus AB and Calculus BC. And I'm not sure which one is the more physics-based. But you're correct, Mr. Schroeth. I'm not sure. Steve, you do BC? It's Calculus BC.
We do have a Calculus BC. Those are for the kids that are super accelerated, which is like a Calc 2 course. Routinely, those numbers are a section really for us. I think she has maybe, 15 or 18 kids possibly this year that are taking that course. So again, I think Walter's concern is the physics. There were 2 levels of AP physics. And you're right, Walter, one of those, I believe, is a calculus-based physics. But really what that is, it's not that the calculus is taught within that course. It's that they utilize the calculus in what they're doing in order to solve problems, as opposed to solely being dependent upon pre-calculus math.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then Mrs. Lowry, I think you had the other question.
Yeah.
Your question was about the different levels of calculus. We have, I've been here for 28 years, and we've attempted several times to offer both an AP calculus course and a non-AP calculus course. And every time that we have run that non-AP calculus course, enrollment has been usually in the single digits at best. We're talking sometimes 3, 4 kids, 5 kids. And what's happened over the years is that's had to have been phased out again, just because we don't have the staff to teach a course with only 4 kids.
So then if those kids need a math class, they're now taking AP Calc and then have to take the AP exam?
That's where our current guidelines are, yes, in order to meet the weighted grade. Qualification, they do have to do that, but that again is across the board in our AP courses. And so that's kind of above my head in terms of decision making.
Right. No, and I just think that it's unfortunate that we've got, we probably have some kids in those classes that would prefer not to be in the AP class, but they need a math. And so that's the math that they're in. And I think for some of our students, it probably adds some stress to their life, knowing that they're going to have to take that AP test. But I understand. I mean, I get where you're, what you're saying.
I will say this, in order to take AP Calculus in our building, the students do have to be above grade level in math. If you are a grade level student in math, you take pre-calculus as a senior. And so we are talking about kids who, at least somewhere along the way, were deemed to be accelerated. And so, there are a variety of options. As far as graduation requirements, they do need 3 years of math. And so if an accelerated kid, for instance, finds themselves in a position where, gosh, I'm going to major in something that's not math related. I'm a little stressed over the AP Calculus course. They do have that option as a senior, not to have to take a math course for graduation. Of course, as a math teacher, I really don't like to recommend that to kids, but it is an option in terms of meeting their graduation requirements. So those kids that do, I guess my point is, those kids that do get to that level where they have to take an AP course, whether it be calculus or stats, are really on a track where they've been accelerated in math throughout their junior high and high school, probably elementary careers as well.
Right. No, I understand that. I just think for some students, they could benefit from a year without the stress of the AP exam. And I would say that I would encourage every student to take 4 years of math, because the research shows that their persistence and success, especially if they're going on to post-secondary education, really hinges on that 4th year of math, and that students who don't take a 4th year of math statistically don't do quite as well in the college and university environment their first year.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
I think we've discussed that casually, at least, about requiring that 4th year of math at the board level for graduation, but we've never chased it down too far. I'd like to point out that although the AP is a good conversation and we need that, we still are 1 out of 4 of our kids are not performing well, and that number's been stuck there for more than a decade. And I keep hoping that we're going to be able to nudge that thing up. And I'm appalled that Pennsylvania is bragging that 45% of our kids are performing okay. That's really, we got to do better. We got to do better for the struggling kids. I think some of your evaluation techniques looks like they will help. certainly the last 8 years on this program, we haven't moved that, we haven't budged that number at all. So I'm hopeful that this will help. Rob, the board funded, significantly increased the funding for the curriculum. So we're operating within the curriculum funding at this point.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay.
We have a little bit of money that we can spend, we can dedicate to this so that we could, at least put the down payment on it this school year, for sure.
So we won't have a negative impact on our budgeting.
No, sir.
Okay.
Rob, in the past, shipping costs for books has been outrageous.
Obscene. Yeah.
Yeah. So do we know what they are and
I don't exactly
where they're
yet.
coming from?
I don't exactly yet, but I can get that number for you.
Well, I'm just
and they
thinking
are-
if they're outrageous again, we may want to explore other options.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, they're typically 10%, and like I said, when you're spending $200,000, 10% is quite a bit. So it gets up there quick. But we will definitely explore every option, and I will definitely haggle as to get those prices down.
I don't see, Rob, on the McGraw-Hill, I don't see specifically anything about shipping, but on the calculus ones, I do see they have an estimated shipping and or processing fee of $732 on a $19,000 order.
Well, that's not bad at all. But yes, I will definitely give it the attention it deserves, man. We'll do everything we can to keep it as low as possible.
Is the committee good with recommending we move this forward to the board with recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Mike, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cochran. Great job tonight, and thank you for leading that department. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Hurley, next we have on the list is a discussion about a STEM curriculum that we'd like to use at the grades 4 or 5 level with Mr. Sheeran. Mr. Sheeran's doing an exceptional job in his new role as our STEM teacher coordinator at the intermediate level, and Mr. Heinrich and him work together, and they're going to give a brief overview of the program. We also have Mr. Rodney Green on the call with us to talk about the program and the benefits of it. If you ask me, you see a lot of teachers, a lot of administrators, and a lot of parents, whatever you want to call it, always looking for their children to be motivational to them, to be inspirational to them. But I think it's time that we have to start looking at being aspirational as well. And the one thing that stood out to me about this curriculum is it does a nice job of combining science as well as the career readiness factors for kids to start to explore what it could like to be a biologist, to be an engineer, to be a scientist, something along that line. So, Rob, I'm going to turn to you. You could talk about the work you and Mr. Sheeran have done at this point and what the next steps are going from there. Then, if it's okay with you, Mr. Heinrich, we'll turn over to Mr. Green. Okay, sir?
Mike, before you do that, wasn't our junior high STEM people honored here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. They were recognized as the middle school technology program in the state. They've done an incredible job preparing kids for the high school in that area. And I was going to bring it up at the next board meeting and recognize them publicly, but they were recognized as the middle school technology program of the year. And they've done an amazing job. And I think the work Dave's doing at 4-5 will help feed into that program as well, sir. So that's correct.
Great. Okay. Move on.
That's exactly correct. Mr. Sheeran has been working closely with them, and they've been, helping him out as well as he develops this program. And he's done an excellent job trying to find what makes their program great are the hands-on activities that they do, world learning and problem-solving skills that they apply, and they make it fun and engaging. And what this Classroom Adventures provides is something very similar, where it's a real-world simulation where the kids are posed with problems and they almost have to solve these puzzles, to figure out what's going on So I'll let Mr. Sheeran talk a little bit about it, and then we'll follow up. Mr. Sheeran.
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. I just wanted to mention my appreciation for being able to speak here tonight. I do wanted to just talk a little bit about why I think that this would be a great idea for us. First of all, I know the Challenger Center initiative has been something that the district has supported in the past. The Classroom Adventure programs that they're providing right now are fully ready to implement when you receive them. And there is teacher professional development seminars ready to go as well, which I would really appreciate, because that's something, as the teacher, I could definitely make sure that I'm using the program with fidelity. I think this is a great opportunity to invest early in a program that is going to grow even further. My goal with this would be to implement at least one adventure in each of the grade levels at both of the intermediate buildings. And if it's a successful, positive experience, I could build on that by adding in others of the adventures later in this school year, or build them into the following school year. The case in point here, there's a really great example that I was thinking about. Right now, 4th grade students at Eisenhower have just finished exploring national parks, and they've created some amazing projects to demonstrate their knowledge of a chosen park. This was through their social studies classes, I believe. So one park I noticed several students reporting on was the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And in one of the classroom adventures called Nature Rangers, students would take on the role of park rangers at Great Smoky Mountains. And they're challenged to identify and eliminate an invasive plant species. There are additional challenges along the way, such as repairing a washed out bridge before they can continue on in their adventure. So students are learning about the environment, engineering, and ecosystems, including the impact that outsiders can have on a natural system, which is something that Pennsylvania is even experiencing right now with the spotted lanternfly. So this program includes digital simulations with the STEM challenges, and it offers a way to collaborate with other subject areas as well, including, like right now, ELA would be a perfect tie-in because there's a nonfiction writing component that comes with the program. So this is exactly the kind of experience that I'd like to offer for students in our district elementary buildings. As I've told the students in the past, one of the great things about this STEAM class is that we can take multiple subject areas and be able to incorporate them into one great experience where we're actually using what we've learned from the different areas.
Mr. Green, if there's nothing further from Mr. Sheeran, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Green.
I'll unmute my microphone. Thank you. I really have very little else to add. I just want to say again, thank you for Indiana School District looking at this curriculum, and many of the points that have been made already about the program, but especially for the Challenger Learning Center, we've always seen this program as being very much a part of a regional workforce development strategy. And these missions that have been created, these electronic missions for these grade levels, 3rd to 5th grade, we think complement very much the whole career exploration mission of the schools, and also meets obviously a lot of the Chapter 339 requirements that the school districts are being challenged to meet today. The missions, again, I'm not going to go into detail. Mr. Sheeran, I gave a great example. I couldn't have done better of how interdisciplinary the content is. But I will say that again, these missions have been exposed to over 5 million students now in the United States. They're aligned to the next generation science standards, and Common Core standards. So we know that there will be many commonalities and alignments to the Indiana curriculum. We just see this as a great opportunity. Our center is not up and running yet as a bricks and mortar facility, but this is one component of what we will be offering in the region. So to have this kind of a partnership working with Indiana School District, and we hope to make contact with other school districts in the region to do the same thing, is, I think, a great opportunity. And especially, again, there's just so much that has been said already about how schools have had to adjust to the pandemic. Having this type of remote content, and to have a program that's basically broken into 3 one-hour facilitated sessions, problem-solving, high-order thinking skills, along with a facilitator, and in this case, having a facilitator who's a member of the school district. We just think it would be a great way to expose the region to this type of, again, content, and hopefully give us a chance to also educate people on some of the other opportunities that come along with the Challenger Learning Center of Indiana.
Well, thank you, sir. And I just want to put my endorsement in there as well. This is something that's cross-curricular. It involves, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication skills, all the 21st century skills that we want to enforce, and enhance in our students. And it fits very, very nicely with all of the STEM initiatives and STEM standards as well. So, there is a fee that goes with it, which is why it's a board agenda item here. The fee is not bad, and we do have money set aside for it if you would choose to approve it.
Okay, Rob, what is the cost? I couldn't find it in the documents.
So the cost is roughly $4,000 when it's all said and done. For the what we're doing here, we'll have an exact price on the or a not to exceed price on the actual agenda item next week, but we just don't know exactly until we have the exact number of kids.
So is this different from what our teachers are already doing? I mean, I would expect that our teachers would already be doing some of this.
They are doing some of it for sure. Mr. Sheeran is doing a great job, advising the teachers on how they can incorporate STEM standards into their curriculum. However, this program takes it to a next level. There's an actual simulation, and if I linked the brief presentation on the agenda so you can watch a video that shows the simulation as it goes through. And then, like as Mr. Green pointed out, there were 3 one-hour sessions that the students would work through, almost like a special lab day, where it's almost like a virtual field trip or a virtual playtime, I guess, but it's with lofty educational goals worked in there. So it is definitely different, but similar.
So one of the things that concerns me about this, and STEM is important, but I think we're missing the arts in all of these conversations. And some of our students are not going to go into STEM fields, whether that's career-wise or as they further their education. So is there something that the school district can do to add the A into that curriculum and supplement that with some arts activities and integrate that into the arts curriculum that we offer for our students?
Absolutely, is the short answer. And I think, Mr. Sheeran, were you going to say something?
Yeah, could I speak to that? I don't want to volunteer for anybody else, but one of the other teachers that I've been working closely with right now has been Mr. Scott Kemmerer, who's developing a music technology program. Recently, we've been working on a haunted house project with 4th grade as well. And so what I've been doing with students has been to create an animation, but what he did was to instruct and allow them time to build a sound file using Soundtrap. So that would be more like a soundtrack to go with it. Something like that would certainly be a way to kind of build in the arts into a program like this, where, like, for example, if we're looking at the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, we could certainly go and investigate some of the sound files and actually start to put something like musically together with actual nature sounds in it. Something that's kind of the way I would envision it.
That sounds wonderful. You could do a Rocky Top.
Yeah.
You could have everybody playing banjos and guitars. That sounds exciting.
Absolutely. Smithsonian has a whole program on Appalachian music over the years,
Yeah.
so there's all kinds of things we can do with it.
I think that's
When
terrific. Thank you.
when I took a tour of the site in Wheeling, they had a very active artistic component of this. So I'm going to suggest that they probably still have this. There was a graphic and an artistic component inside those missions that was integral with the mission. So there was those missions. There was clearly art incorporated.
I'd like to add just again, I think again, Mr. Sheeran gave another great example. This is why we want to partner with the school district in this way and have teachers within the school district be trained. And that training really is about a 1 hour overview of understanding how to use all the tools. But by having those local teachers making local decisions about this, there are many opportunities for enrichment within this type of an activity. It's a yes, off the shelf curriculum, so to speak, but of a high quality. When I first viewed it and first interacted with it, it's right up there with the Discovery Channel, with National Geographic. It is that beautiful and that well put together. But coming back down to the local level, the opportunities there for making many tie-ins, for taking the project-based learning that becomes the final product, the outcome of this. There are so many ways that can go, and those are decisions that are made by the local teachers who will serve as a facilitator for the content.
May I ask a question?
Jump in.
This includes 3 simulations that are an hour each. Is each simulation different?
Well, there are three different programs. Each one has a 3-hour component to it. So, for example, one of the missions or adventures is called Nature Rangers. The other one is a Dirt Decoders, which is more like an archaeology type activity. And the third one is an Aquatic Investigators. But each one of those classroom adventures has a 1-hour sessions to it, with again time between those sessions for discussion, for follow-up activities, and for other assignments.
So does the $4,000 get all 3 of those programs?
It's up to the district to choose which one they want to do.
So that's only
Okay.
for 1 hour.
Basically, the answer to the question is the pricing is based on a per student type. Okay, so to take one, you're buying one adventure. So if you buy, in this case, the teacher may say, the best curriculum alignment for us right now is to do the Dirt Decoders because we have archaeology. So yeah, you don't get all 3. You basically get one of those missions on a per student basis. But again, it would be a group decision.
And so what is the per student cost?
Pardon me?
What is the per student cost?
The per student cost that we had projected was approximately $6 per student. And I think that's how you came up with the approximate $4,000 or not to exceed cost. And we would again, we priced base it on instead of a flat rate. We didn't want to be charging for, let's say, a certain number of students who either weren't there or aren't participating in the activity. And we know how enrollments will vary also.
I understand that, Rod, but if we have a class of 4th graders of 200 people, then the cost would be $1,200 for one exercise. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. And I will say this, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm only one voice for our board. But this is, again, our first, I'm going to say, run through on this. And we certainly would be working with districts on pricing depending on how many missions that they would want to do.
Okay, but if my math's right, then we could do 3 missions for less than $4,000 for an entire class.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could.
Okay, so what the board will be asked to do is to approve participating in this activity for an amount not to exceed $4,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And again, and you would not be paying for missions that you would not be doing.
I understand. Okay, but it's so.
Yeah. So the plan right now is to implement
Both
one.
4th and 5th grade, three operations for $4,000 between the 2 grades.
I believe the plan right now is to implement one of the adventures in 4th grade and one of the adventures in 5th grade to try them out. And that would be because we're doing it with Horseman and Eisenhower. I believe the total cost of those 2 missions would be right around $4,000, depending again on how many students are actually going through the mission.
Yeah, and again, I'm using 200 as a typical class size. So whether it's 200 or 225, okay. So you have some freeboard in here to do some training and some other things that come up. We could certainly move this ahead at the agenda. Does the committee have any objection?
I don't. I just have one more question. So, and maybe this is should be talked about at the board meeting, but where's this money coming from? And then will it, if this is something that we like, would there be funds to continue it in subsequent years?
We could always allocate funds in futures. Right now, we have a little bit of money that we're saving from the travel expenses that we normally pay for teachers to go to training. So we lucked out. COVID actually helped us in that area. Because of that extra money, we put that back into the curriculum fund, and so we do have a few $1,000s to spend on this, or or something else if the committee sees fit.
And then would this begin in the spring? Would this be for this school year?
It would be this school year. It would be as soon as Mr. Sheehan felt comfortable implementing it. So probably after Christmas, I imagine. But Mr. Sheehan?
We were shooting for the month of January if possible.
January sounds reasonable to me. Like I said, I'd like to go through the professional development program first, and then implement it as soon as we'd be ready.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Any objections for the committee recommending this to the board? I don't hear any. Michael, you want to move on to the next agenda item?
Yes, sir. The next thing we want you to look at, Mr. McElwain is going to take a couple of minutes to go over the Keystone graduation requirements that PD has issued. It begins with this year's sophomore class, I believe, or last year's sophomore class. He'll get you on the exact dating of it. As you know, PD came in and tried to provide greater flexibility for kids to meet the graduation requirements. When the Keystones first started out, their goal, their idea was to make it a graduation requirement, and then they've seen so many kids. But I think when it first started, there was 8 Keystone tests, and then now we're down to just a couple, which is algebra, ELA, and the biology. But when they first started, they had multiple tests. So what they quickly did then was try to anoint or make the Keystones a graduation requirement, and then give kids multiple pathways. A kid who doesn't pass the test isn't graduating as long as they meet certain other milestones. And it gives the district a little bit of flexibility. What we did was create a one-page summary that Mr. Maffei can go over that's going to need and require board approval. The only caveat there is it's mostly complete. We're still waiting on the legislator and the Pennsylvania Department of Education will get back with some final details that they have yet to approve. But in order for us to get our policies up to date, up to speed, we are asking for tentative approval. With that, I would like to turn it on to Mr. McElwain to give a little overview, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic.
Mr. McElhaney, just a minute. Can we turn all the mics off? Because it's really hard to hear, except for the person who's talking.
Yeah, I only have Wade with the mic on right now.
Okay.
Let's move ahead.
All right. As Mr. Vukovic said, in May of last year, because of school closure, Keystone exams were canceled for the students or postponed. Students did not have to take those in May. And they come out with language. They said that they were going to extend the summer window until the end of September, beginning of October this year, so they could take it. But midway of August, we were planning on coming back full-time, all students in the building. We thought the students would have at least a little over a month to review and get ready for the exams. They did not take in May. However, when we went to a hybrid, we just thought with students only being in the building only for 2 days a week, we thought that wasn't sufficient time, nor was it wise to take away time for the students to get used to their classes at the beginning of the year. So we have the winter window. Now, PDE declared the students who were ready to take Keystone exams in May to be exempt from taking Keystone exams. However, they did not exempt them from fulfilling graduation requirements from PDE. So that creates somewhat of a conflict for our students. So we have made arrangements to have testing occur in December. However, those Keystone exams are only part of the graduation requirements. However, in all of those pathways, those Keystone exams play some role in those. So as we are approaching this December testing of Keystone exams, what we need to be able to do is determine which students are exempt and which ones are going to fulfill the graduation requirements. Frustratingly so, there are two components, the service sector project, the internship, which has not been finalized in the graduation components. However, we feel that there's still enough information for families and students to be able to make a choice about how they are going to fulfill those graduation requirements. The graduation requirements apply to the classes of beginning with 2022, which are this year's juniors. So they have to fulfill those graduation requirements prior to graduating, of course, to graduate. So we need to be able to get information out to parents and those students. These graduation requirements were put into a law in 2018. They were enacted in 2019, but we did not have what we call the cut score information for a lot of those categories until March of last year, 2020. So with only, I think, 2 items yet remaining to be finalized, we still feel that it's important enough so that families and students can prepare and plan accordingly. The easiest path is for the students to take the test. 80 to 85% of our students on any given test will pass the Keystone exam. We think that'll be less because of the time away from taking those courses since direct instruction of March of last year, now taking in December. However, we're at the point where we need to be able to give students and families choices. So the letter that we received from PDE said that they were going to extend the window for testing all the way through March. Well, we think by administering those tests later than sooner, it's going to put our kids at a more of a disadvantage because that puts them further away from when they had direct instruction of those courses. So we like to give those tests yet about the middle of December. Our students have been reviewing since mid-October and will up into that Keystone exam. Additionally, after they take the exam, rather than making those students stay in that academic intervention for the second semester, those students could move on to take classes. So what I'd like to do is get a letter to the parents for those students who are scheduled to take Keystone exams and to say, okay, what path are we going to take? And in doing so, we would like the students to take the exams because we think it is the surest, fastest way for many of our students to meet those graduation requirements. However, there will be a number of students who have to meet those graduation requirements through the pathways. So the draft PDE graduation requirements link takes you to a form that we put together that identifies the different pathways and the information associated with each of those pathways. It's draft right now simply because of those 2 items which have yet to be finalized, the service sector project and the internship. However, we feel we have enough information to allow the parents and students to be able to make choices so we can move forward. Because for the juniors, they are on the hook and they will have approximately 1.5 school years to complete the graduation requirements. So we want to be able to provide them enough information to make a decision. So I'm asking for the committee to take a look at those graduation requirements, to bring those up perhaps at the board level so we can get approval, provisional approval, if it might be, until those 2 items are finalized, but at least get it to the place where parents and students can make a decision about fulfilling those graduation requirements.
Thanks, Mr. McElhaney. Mr. Harley, if I can add in, please note that we have advocated for our students by going to our state rep and also Pennsylvania Department of Education, asking them to put a moratorium on the graduation requirements. We realize and recognize that they cannot and will not have the authority to do that for state exams, because what happens is politically, the federal government gives the state of Pennsylvania about $750 million a year. And a part of that, that funding that can come our way, easily withhold some of that money if we were to not administer those exams. So the state, and I rightfully so, I get it, said, look, go ahead and administer a test. And that's why they increased the window. So we are advocating for our kids. We are advocating for our community, try to put a moratorium on it and let us start with next year's group. However, I don't think that will be realistic at this time. So I support and recommend the board considers that recommendation update, and that way we can notify families so they're able to plan accordingly and they understand what's at stake and what's out of our control. I think that's important as well. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Harlan.
Thank you, Mike. Committee members, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I think we need to be creative in how we help students be able to fulfill those yet to be undetermined requirements and what that means and how that can be done virtually or in a way that doesn't disadvantage students who may have some challenges in getting to school or given the way we're teaching, students that may need some additional supports or whatever, because this is not something that we could have anticipated that this would all happen and we'd be in the middle of a pandemic.
Agreed, 100%, Ms. Lowry. I think you're absolutely right.
Mr. Vukovic, if I could add, you had mentioned, Mr. Heinrich and I, we went to visit Representative Struzzi and he talked about Senate Bill 1216, which provides some relief for students, especially for the graduating classes of 2022 and 2023. I received message from him today that in fact that bill in some version is moved into the House as well. So hopefully sometime after the election, we have some relief for our students.
Any other comments?
Tom,
Yes, Walter.
before we move on, I want to make a general comment. A couple of times, various folks that have participated here tonight have suggested that we're having a board meeting next week, and I don't believe that's the case. I think it's actually 2 weeks from tonight on the 16th. Mike, is that correct?
You are correct, sir. It's November 16th. I apologize. We're only having one meeting in November, if at all possible.
So all of the recommendations and board actions that we've discussed here tonight will actually take place not this coming Monday night, but 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Mike, I think you can bring this to the board. It seems like we got ourselves painted into a corner and making the best of the situation. So,
okay.
Okay.
Right.
Wait, make sure everybody passes, okay?
If it's okay with you, Mr. Hurley, we'll hit the non-agenda items, if that's okay with you, sir.
Absolutely.
I don't know if Dr. Osborne is on the call with us, but if he is, we wanted to give him some time to update about the small business incubator research project we have going on with IUP and their current updates and where they stand. Dr. Osborne, are you on the call? I know he was trying, and Randy reached out to him, but I don't know if he's on the call or not.
I don't see him on the call, Mike.
Well, then how about we just move on to see if he joins us later.
Mr. Vukovic, he's not on right now. He's I'm not sure what's going on with him. I'm still trying to walk him through something. We've never really had an issue with anybody getting on before, but he is having an issue. So I'm trying to walk him through that. So maybe if we can get him on, we can maybe come back to that one.
Yeah,
Mike,
Randy,
let's go ahead to item 2 then, and as soon as Steve gets on, we can bounce back.
absolutely, sir. Randy, I'm going to take over the screen. I'm going to present something real quick, if you're okay with that. So allow me to present here.
Yep.
So just want to take a couple minutes here and give you an update about our return to school, where we're at for the second quarter. And one thing we did that the board was in support of was issue our elementary families, those students who may be on the computer mediated instruction, about what their thoughts are and what they want to do for the second 9 weeks. So when we did the results, you'll see we have a pretty nice response rate and a rather consistent breakdown proportionally amongst all the different grade levels. So when you look at that, it tells us, there's a portion of each grade level that families had interest due to the pandemic about the computer mediated instruction. The one thing that seems to be a success for us is it's relatively, even though it's a relatively even split, the synchronous has grown to be more favorable or to the liking of most families. The one thing we should talk about here, and I will do it next week at Policy and Personnel, but really it does connect to what we're doing academic. We have to have real discussions about morphing the two worlds together, meaning synchronous and asynchronous, and redoing and rebranding the way we do Ideal. That way it becomes a combination of asynchronous and synchronous work. I got to be honest with you, with the pandemic here and with the amount of success we had with the synchronous efforts, I think this is a model that's here to stay. And I think it's something that we should continue to look at and monitor as a group. Now, Mr. Harley and committee members, I'll go quickly through this because I know we're running out of time, but when you look at this mode of learning, what the new ideal could be, the combination of synchronous and asynchronous, there's obviously some pros and cons. The pros, it's a better model for kids. I think they enjoy being checked in and communicated with a daily basis with their teacher. It's a better option than traditional outside cybers. Why? Because it's our curriculum, our kids, our teachers, and I think they can really adapt it to meet their needs. It's cost neutral, hopefully at the very least, but also it could save us money down the road. And we could also reduce some expenditures related to Seneca Valley costs for the platform itself. So what you'll see is a merging of ideal, the asynchronous and the synchronous world come together with Google Classrooms being the main platform. Now, what's the cons of this? And we don't have to decide tonight. Again, we'll go in greater detail next week at Policy and Personnel. I got to tell you, there's a lot of criticism or concern about the people we hired to fill in these temporary roles. And let me be clear with this entire committee, they did an incredible job meeting the moment. And in this particular case, I think we need to look at not only hiring them when vacancies come about, but also I think we need to look at hiring 1 or 2 more individuals full-time for synchronous teachers. Yes, I realize it's an added expenditure, but I think it could offset that when we have lesser enrollments in outside cybers, and it's part of our current expenditure strategies that we already undertaken. And what we're looking at doing is, if synchronous is here to stay, especially at the elementary level, we have 1 person managing that world, and we may need to look at bringing 1 to 2 more people. And when you look at the caseload and contractual language that's required, but also when you look at the needs of the kids, I think 1 or 2 people may get us there. We made some significant smart cuts ahead of the pandemic that puts us in a position to do this, and I'd rather hire them sooner than later before they go looking elsewhere for employment. I don't think it's still as good as face-to-face live instruction, but I do think those teachers have done an incredible job. The feedback, what we've seen firsthand, has been quite amazing, and I think this model's here to stay. I think there's a lot of lessons in the pandemic. 1 would be synchronized learning. 2 would be us challenging, really, do we mean all means all, and is equity really important part of what we do? And this has shown us to be able to test our values and our vision and beliefs to the core, and I think we're going to have to invest in this down the road. Again, we'll talk more policy and personnel, but I didn't want to surprise anyone when this conversation comes to life. So that's elementary. If you ask what we can do at the high school and junior high to offset some costs and provide some ongoing instruction, one thing we're looking at doing is providing a majority of teachers with a computer-mediated instruction period where they can provide live, ongoing, synchronous instruction to students and give them the dedication they need. Now, obviously, that would be determined by a number of kids at the secondary level who request such classes, but we think we have a better way of building a schedule to accommodate that and to meet that need while offsetting outside cyber costs, but also giving that a personal attention. You hear a lot of rhetoric, in my personal opinion, about personalized learning, and I think this is a way to do it truly better and do it meaningful with our teachers. So those are some pros and cons, and again, we'll dig deeper into it next week. Well, and here's the big thing. The question would be, Mike, how many kids want to come back K-5? We're looking at less than 20% returning, about 34 students in total grades. And the good news is with some hard work, we have capacity to accept them all. The one caution I want to give this board is 3rd grade is maxed out due to social distancing guidelines we implemented. And we need to be aware of that. On the agenda, not on this presentation, but the agenda, I included an email from our code enforcement officer, how we're able to accommodate the kids. And what we're doing is we're able to put a desk in each one of the 3rd grade classrooms at Ben Franklin, East Pike, which maxes them out, but is not a violation of code, because I know you value safety and transparency. So we want to make sure that what we're doing has been vetted and checked by the experts. If not, we would come back to you with another option. But again, I think the biggest thing out of here is two items. 1, I'm proud that we can accept everyone who's come back. But 2, we are maxed out in 3rd grade, and we're going to have to continue to monitor that situation and see where we go from here. Now, our goal is to lock everyone in for the second 9 weeks because they had a choice whether or not they want to come back. But if I see kids struggle or not doing well, we have to revisit that because I think we have a moral and ethical obligation to do so. But, at this point, the good news, we are accommodating everyone to come back. The bad news, we're starting to get maxed out. 3rd grade is maxed out. We do have room in the other classes. Kindergarten's become a little concerning, but I don't see those numbers changing. But we are able to accommodate those who want it. This slide's on here just for an FYI. It doesn't seem like social distancing was the biggest factor for families who wanted to come back. I think it was one of consistency. However, I have to be clear and direct with this board, as much as I hope I'm correct in this statement. The hybrid model and the 6 feet of social distancing is the one thing that's keeping us open. As we look at our cases, which we'll go over later, it's the one thing that is allowing us to maintain some sort of continuity of education for our families. So again, where we are with our second 9 weeks, third grade is tight. Can't take any more students. We've maxed them out to capacity. We'll have to look at our options when that issue may or may not arise. We do have some capacity in other areas. We're ready to make the switch on Monday, November 9th, just like we informed families we would. Those kids who were struggling in the elementary grade and had a chance to come back, we already offered that. Everyone else who's doing well but just says, look, I'm ready to come back, they'll make that change on Monday, November 9th. The one point of criticism you may have is say, well, Mike, the start of the second 9 weeks is not till Tuesday, November 10th. My thought is it's elementary school. That's not a big difference. Or a big deal, in my opinion, humble opinion. I'd rather start them on a Monday than a Tuesday. Parent letters are sent out today. Some will go out tomorrow with some bus changes. We're sending a hard copy as well as an electronic copy. And then staff are also notified of the new students and the pending return of the 9th grade, and their bus arrangements were made as well. I do have to give credit to where credit's due to our families and to our teachers for their flexibility in meeting this moment. We did a lot of work on making this happen for everyone, and everyone was absolutely flexible and conducive to working. I know there's two things people hate, change and the way things are, but this change went pretty well, and I'm really appreciative and respectful of all the work that the teachers put in this, the administration, as well as the families for, bearing with us and making this work. Again, 100% of those who wanted to return to school at this current time were able to do so while maintaining our social distancing guidelines that we set forth in our health and safety plan. What's the impact? We're still adhering to it, social distancing like we expected, and we had to reassign some staff. Now, this is a big one to talk about, which we'll get at the very end of the agenda. Under this scenario, we could, and we are going to move with the board, as long as the board's okay with it, our reading specialists from being computer-mediated instruction to providing some more support interventions to our at-risk students. I got to tell you, sooner or later, that shutdown from last year is going to catch up with a lot of school districts. We have our benchmark data now. We know where we're at, and what we want to do is start intervening where we can, understanding our capacity is limited. But by doing this move, we're able to free up a reading specialist as well as a literacy intern back into the rotation to providing interventions. We're working on how that will look like, as far as, is it going to be based on need, based on grade level, or combination of the two? But at this point, we have a chance now to start filling in the gaps and catching kids up where they need to be. This is the best utilization of staff at the current time, and we may have to revisit it if we get more students in third grade. But for now, I would urge and recommend that we try to get the interventions, within our capacity to those who need them. And we'll talk about that here at the end, but that's exactly what this return allows us to do. It gives us some greater flexibility to provide help to those students who may be struggling. And again, we are investing in our primary grade levels because we're going to make an argument that's where it starts. We're seeing the impact of what happens when we don't, and we want to make sure that we use our staff wisely, effectively, and specifically. One thing I do want to update the community and the board about is we had a phone call today with the Department of Health and Pennsylvania Department of Education. Armstrong, Blair, Cambria, and Indiana counties were on the call. All four were placed in the substantial category. PD is recommended staying in the current model, which is hybrid for us at this time. And we will possibly reconvene on Friday to look at the data. Folks, it's getting worse. We know that. I don't want to sugarcoat that or mislead the public or yourself. We're maintaining where we're at. And I have to, again, I know I sound like a broken record, and I apologize all the letters to the board and family. The only thing keeping us open right now, in my opinion, is the hybrid model. It's allowing us to really look at the kids in pods and groups and be able to differentiate whether or not we should remain open or stay closed. It is working. At the current time, we have 16 total cases since teachers returned in August. That's less than 1% of our total staff and student population. It's 0.51%. 14 students and 2 staff members. And again, I would fear that these numbers would be worse if we didn't have the hybrid model. Now, again, if the board makes a decision to go 4 days a week or increase that seat time, I understand it completely, and we'll run that play. But as you look around us, a lot of schools are having to close. And the one thing that we're able to do is maintain our current status. Now, again, are we pleased as administrators? We're only getting some kids in 2 days a week and 3 days off? No, we're absolutely not. But we did provide flexibility for those families who are struggling by bringing their child or children in up to 4 days based upon social distancing in place, and it's working. For those who have requested it, best of my understanding, we've accommodated that, and we also prioritized our special needs students, so they're most at risk as well, and they're getting 4 days a week. And as we move through the next several weeks and months, we'll present other models that look at the second semester and give you some different options. But for right now, we wanted to value transparency and let you know where we're at. Today, I wrote to the families twice saying we're going to remain open based on the data and the specifics that I include in that letter. But I just want to make the board aware of the conditions we're faced with and what we're looking at their current time, because what you see happening, Mr. Harley and committee members, is you see some schools who have either closed for a long time, or some schools are looking at modifying their school calendars to include more virtual days after the Thanksgiving break. There's some fear and trepidation among school districts about maybe families going outside of the state to other regions, and then worried about the possible spread of the virus upon their return. So some schools are looking at 3 to 7 days remote learning upon end of the Thanksgiving break, and some are even looking at doing it longer. I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight. I'm just trying to keep you on pace of what's happening across the Commonwealth and across the country, so you're aware of it, because we have to be honest with each other. Cases are rising. We've been absolutely blessed, fortunate, lucky, and the results of good planning to avoid a shutdown. But I want to give you some options as the Thanksgiving is fast approaching. Again, not asking for you to make a decision at all, just presenting what's going on again across the country and across the Commonwealth. And lastly, we also sent a letter to our families asking them to plan, because we got to be ready, sir. The hybrid is the only real thing that's keeping us open at the current time, and based on results, cases, and other issues, who knows what can happen or how quick things can turn poorly. So what we did was not want to cause panic to families or upset families, but rather we wanted to make them aware of it. Look, you should have a plan in place in case a closure were to come. And that's not to set paranoia or get everyone nervous. It's just trying to be transparent that this could happen, and what you could do to please do whatever you can to be ready in case it would. Do I hope it happens? Absolutely not. We've done a nice job maintaining some continuity of education for our students, and we hope it stays that way. But I think we'd be remiss and somewhat disingenuous if we didn't make this a real possibility, make families aware of this possibility. That's all I have with regards to that. And I'll see if there are any questions on that. I know it's a bunch of good news, but we wanted to try to fit everything in so everyone knows where we're at, sir, because I know this board values transparency, and so do we. And we just want to give you an update. And there's some good accomplishments made by this, by getting these kids at risk back into school, whether it's at the elementary or secondary. And then everyone who wanted to come back at the elementary level, we got them back in. And we just want to be open and honest where we're at, because we are filling up and we are starting to get to the point where it's getting tougher and tougher, but we are in a place to be successful and help these kids be successful to the best of our ability. So with that, Mr. Harley, I'll turn it over to you and the committee for any questions and follow up to the administration. That's on the call here.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board and the committee?
I don't have a question. I just have a suggestion or a comment. I think we've done a phenomenal job with synchronous, and I think we still have members of the community that don't fully understand what that means and how that actually works. So it'd be really nice to put together some success stories and something that explains that a little bit, maybe in a way that is easy to understand, rather than using the word synchronous and assuming that everybody knows what that means. I think that'll go a long way in letting our families understand what that means and how that's similar to what they may be seeing that some of our cyber charter schools offer. And I do agree that I think we do a better job with our curriculum and teaching our students. And I think we've done a great job in being responsive to what the community wanted. I mean, we turned that around in about a week from when we heard that community members were looking for synchronous to be able to commit and offer that. So I really want to applaud the teachers and the administrators and all the work that went into making that happen.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. And the other thing I'll add, I have on the agenda, I don't have it with you available to public, but we have an internal document that we're working on, that if we were to close, what would be the process protocols we would utilize for communicating with families, getting them supplies, et cetera, et cetera. But that's an internal planning document. I can always share it with the board if you like, but we are ready to go, and hopefully I don't have to have this conversation with you. Hopefully we don't have to go down that road, but at least want you to know we're prepared. And I'm not trying to be doomsday, but I'm just trying to be realistic with the data that we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen.
Mike, I'll echo Uta's comments a bit. I think the board, the administration, the principals, the teachers, nurses have all put their shoulder to this wheel and trying to keep us open. I've been saying since March that a long-term plan is making it to Friday, and we've certainly done that, and it looks like we're going to continue doing that as long as we possibly can. I think this closing down of a district for 2 weeks due to COVID is very disruptive to the educational process. And yes, we're kind of operating with a hand tied behind our back, but we're still operating, and we have a bunch of kids that are getting education that we promise the community. So congratulations to all the folks, the hundreds of people who keep the lights on in these buildings every day.
Thank you, sir. If there's any other questions or comments, I'll move on, but I don't know if there's anything else, Mr. Harley.
No.
Say something.
Yeah, just very quickly, I kind of liked Uta's suggestion that, you know, maybe we figure out somehow to tell the stories on some of the success of folks that have been successful with the synchronous. And just as a suggestion, maybe you could round one or two of those up for your next Indiana in the Morning segment on the radio station. Maybe that would be a way to help get some of that out there to the public as well.
Yes, sir, we can do that. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but people were concerned about the quality of subs we could find and whether or not we'd meet the moment, and they've done that. And I would honestly say a lot of them has surpassed the moment. There's four that stand out in mind, but the two I'll talk about are our synchronous teachers. Natalie Deck and Angela Fontino have done an amazing job to really go out there and meet the moment and provide a caring, loving environment. I don't know how they did it virtually, but they did. And that matters, because I know we're talking about the academic gains, but we also can't forget one of our visions and values and beliefs is the social emotional learning needs of our kids. And the one thing that she does, they both do amazingly, is make the kids feel connected. They make the kids feel safe. They make them feel that their relationship matters. And that's what really learning is about, right? You win with people, and they've done a nice job connecting with their kids. And I think Uta's right, Ms. Lowry's right. We'll work on some sort of follow-up communication, but we're also like to celebrate them and do something to recognize them because they've done an incredible job, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
I think Ms. Cinta had something, Mr. Harley.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, reiterate, like echo everything that Tom and Uta and Walter said, first of all. But Mike, your idea of sending out a letter, having parents prepare, I think is more important than ever now, because the numbers are climbing. But what's coming up is Thanksgiving and Christmas, and those are two times of the year when people get together. And I would hope that people would be very, very careful and not have a lot of large group meetings, but I don't know how you're going to stop it. And I almost think that it's probably inevitable that the numbers are going to get out of control and we're going to have to go to totally remote. So I just hope that once again, people will continue being as careful as they possibly can so that we can keep the kids in school.
I agree with Ms. Cinda 100%.
Angela McMasters, you had something to say?
I was just going to comment from the parent perspective on the synchronous and how well the teachers do controlling for, you know, they don't have the same learning environment that you have in a classroom. But I find that in all of our experiences, my mother and mother-in-law have been kind of overseeing 4 different grade levels at our house, and that encompasses from kindergarten through middle school. And I just feel like the amount of interaction that they have with their teachers has been incredible. And I just kind of echo everything that was shared already about the work that our teachers are doing, and that it's been successful for our students. And we've just had a very positive experience with all the extra energy and effort I know our teachers are putting in to make it happen.
Tom, I would just like to say that I think the most important thing the whole community has done is that we haven't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that's been important because we all know there's been glitches and overall it's just not an optimum situation. But boy, I'll tell you, we've stayed open, and I think that's been the real plus. We've accepted that we're not going to be able to be perfect, but we're trying to be darn good. So thank you.
And Mr. Harley, I could not reiterate what Madam Vice President said anymore. End of the day, it's about progress, not perfection. That's one. And two, if you want to say what's the results that you have financially or academically, well, here's one financially. We've only seen a handful increase in the number of kids going to outside cyber schools. I think it's about 10. You're talking about a nationwide effort where there's waiting lists now to get in cyber schools, and we've only seen 10 new enrollments from last year going to outside cyber. So that's 100% reflective of what our teachers are doing to make that worthwhile, to make it productive, and to make it impactful. So there is some real benefits there. Now, financially, you want to talk about, there's, I think Armstrong School District had a point where at a $2 million swing in outside cyber costs. So you talk about a budget breaker in the middle of a pandemic, that can really break and hurt a lot of school districts. And our teachers have met the moment, along with the leadership of the principals and Rob and Justin and everyone else. They've met that moment to do a great job. So there is some data to look at, and there are some results to be proud of. And again, Madam Vice President is right, though. We're talking about progress, not perfection right now. This is new for everyone. And we took a model of synchronous, which we didn't know what it would look like, and they're making it work. And we're quite proud of their efforts, Mr. Harlan.
Very good, Mike. Any other comments on this subject?
I do. I want to chime in for a sec. I appreciate all of your surveys, Mike, and the information that you received from parents. I absolutely agree that a synchronous model with our curriculum that is exactly the same as what our students in the buildings get is important if we do a cyber program. So I'm very interested in that. And I am still hearing that Wednesdays are a struggle for some families. So I would like to propose that we look at coming back on Wednesdays every other week for each cohort, or look at something that we can do. So just to throw it out there, I've heard from a lot of parents. It is a day that that I just think we owe it to our community to look at if we can if we can bring students back for 1 extra day or 2 extra days a month.
And Ms. Sleeper, you're absolutely right. We can look at that, and what we could do is maybe present in December what the costs are associated with that, what that may look like, and let the board decide. Because, the big elephant in the room is always going to be the social distancing factor, and we have to work through that. But I definitely could do that. And are you okay with maybe December, Ms. Sleeper, that we present something out? Because I couldn't do it.
Absolutely. Right. I just want to start the discussion.
Okay.
So, yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mike, and that's certainly something to look at more seriously when the infection rates start to fall. Probably not worth doing where we're still heading up.
Yeah, a lot of it's on me. I apologize not giving it the due diligence.
You haven't done anything else this week, have you?
It's been a little busy on our end. So yes, sir, we could start looking at that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but my point is that there's no way we're going to institute something like that with more contact, with the infection rates going up, and we're in danger of shutting completely down. So it's certainly one of the ways we can do a half step in January where that would make sense.
Okay.
If Cinda's Christmas parties blow up on us and we're shut down for 2 months, then we certainly wouldn't do it.
Yes, sir.
I think, Tom, what Tamara is suggesting does not increase social or the contact. She's recommending that the one cohort goes the first Wednesday of the month, say, and the other cohort goes the second. The first and third and second and fourth or something. So
no, and Terry, I understand that. My point is that we're using that off day to catch up. We're cleaning the buildings.
But the teachers are there all day, so cleaning doesn't start until 4 o'clock when the teachers leave.
Okay, Mike, go ahead and put it in place.
We can start working on it. Yes, sir. We'll present in December some options. Okay.
Yep.
The next one I want to talk about is just more of an FYI and update. Earlier in the year, Randy, if you don't mind scrolling down, I'm sorry, sir. Earlier in the year, we got some aid from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. About $200,000, and we were owed $82,000, and we didn't know when that was to be expected. Now we're information that we're understanding information as soon as tomorrow on how to apply and get the remaining $82,000 will be made available to us. We met, Justin, myself, and Jared and Rob. We need to meet with Randy and the principals to see what their needs are. I met with the nurses as well, and Greg. And what we're doing is at the $82,000, it's non-competitive. It's just money coming our way, but we have to be able to explain a rationale how we want to use it. We're currently looking at really three things: PPE and air purifiers for some of the rooms and to help with the ventilation with the nurse's office. And Greg can explain more than that. What I could do is have him, send something to the board out tomorrow, but I understand the why behind it, but I just would do a terrible disservice trying to explain it as well as he could. We're also looking at some technology subscriptions to help facilitate distant learning, Pear Deck, Nearpod, some other things that we use for distance remote learning. And then what's ever left, we'd like to get some Chromebooks. We have now at this point, by going one-to-one across the district, have used all of our resources and all of our Chromebooks that we have in place, and we're in dire need of starting to replace them. So whatever's remaining from that, which I think would be $30,000, which would equate to close to 100 Chromebooks, we would like to try to allocate that money towards that. Again, it's always open up for debate, but there's usually a time frame which we have to spend that money by. As you know, before we spend it on the other items that we discussed previously, but for now, those are the big three areas that we think that money can be best spent. And we did solicit some information from the nurses as well as the maintenance, so they get what they need. Greg gets what he needs for as far as PPE. But this is where we're at, Mr. Harley, and I just want to make the committee aware of it. That's what we're looking at spending the money on, sir.
Mike, I'd like to advocate that we look at these air purifiers for the cafeterias, places where the kids are taking the masks off. And that we make that a priority, get those numbers in place, and if we decide to go that way, that we get those things ordered. I think we're when they take the mask off, that's where we're most at risk.
I could do that, sir. I know you ordered several, and I thought they were for the nurse's office, but don't quote me. I'll get you more information and let you know what he's looking at with the plan for that by the end of this week, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Tom, this is Walter.
Yes, Walter, go ahead.
I think, but I'm not 100% positive that Steve Osborne numbers is showing up on the list now.
Yeah, Steve sent me a text, Walter, and he had to go to another meeting, so we're on our own tonight. He's going to send us an email, so we'll pick it up when we come down to the agenda.
Okay. Mr. Harley, is there any other questions from the committee with regards to that funding that we're getting our way, or can I move on to the next one, sir?
Can we move on? Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, the next thing, this is really quick. NAEP testing's coming out. It's a national norm test where they sent to see how the United States is comparing to other countries. They notified me, but the buildings have not got any information yet about it. I'm assuming it's because the test is not till January, but we at least wanted to make you aware, and we'll send a letter out to families notifying them once we get more information. Also, number 5, we talked about winter Keystones. I think it's sad that they're doing it. Wish they would have put a moratorium on that, as well as their graduation requirements, but there's a financial consequence in place, and I understand why they're administering the test. I'm just appreciative of the fact that they did give schools some discretion and some latitude in a window to determine when they think it's best to administer that. But I wanted to be upfront with regards to the consequence if the state was failing to give that. So, I know we like to be critical at times, but in this case, they're doing what they're told. Thus, we're going to do what we're told and provide some flexibility for kids. And who knows what may happen from now until then. And Randy, can you move on to the next one? Last thing I want to do is I want to talk to the board, have an open, candid conversation, and revisit a conversation we started back in 2018 with regards to revamping our literacy program to meet the needs of our students and build a model, MTSS model that is values academic needs as much as the behavioral needs. I think we're in a point in society where teamwork matters just as much as trigonometry or character matters just as much as chemistry. And what we're trying to do here is really identify the holes in our system and fill in those gaps so that we can, if all means all, this is really a call to equity. In my personal opinion, if all means all, then we have to do what's best needs of our kids. And I understand that change is hard and, no one likes it. But at the end of the day, our teachers were never broken. And let me be clear upon that. We have incredible teachers. I think what the issue was at some levels, at some points, our system was broken. So what we did here is we include some supporting documents and videos that you can look at. And what I'm going to do at this point is turn it over to our MTSS facilitators who are educators, and Mr. Heinrich to talk about the things that we're doing in this area. And it's a result of an email I got with some very good questions about why are we doing this? Why are we making these changes programmatic wise? And I get it. You may say, Mike, what's the big deal with one email out of a town of 30,000? Because it matters, right? All emails matter. And what we want to do is let people know that what we're doing is not only in the best interest of kids because we think so, but the research, the evidence, everything out there from people much smarter than us is advocating and telling us this is what needs to be done. And how dare we if we ignore that harsh reality and those harsh facts. What we're doing is building a system that will meet the needs of our kids, built upon the strengths of great teachers and administrators who are going to make this work. With that said, I would like to turn over Mr. Heinrich and Miss Dr. McMasters and her team, and they can walk us through where we're at. Mr. Heinrich?
Yes, sir. Randy, if you could turn control over to me again, I'd appreciate it. Just to start off tonight, almost 2 years ago, you did empower the administration to shift the approach we were taking to literacy as a district. And we were just trying to give you an update of what that looks like here today. Hold on one second. I have the wrong presentation up. Where we've come in the past 2 years and where we are and where we're headed.
And as Mr. Heinrich gets that prepared, Mr. Harley, we want to just keep this an ongoing conversation because we know we value transparency as much as you do. And we have to be committed to this change as it takes time and we're going to see benefits. But I think what happens if we're just willing to abandon the work we've done, I think the results, it could be dire. I think there's severe consequences. And hopefully you see tonight as they go through it, there's some challenges ahead that we need to get through programmatic wise that we need to do a better job supporting staff on, but also there are some victories. So Mr. Heinrich, are you ready this time, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So as you know, we moved from a whole language or balanced literacy approach to an instructional approach based on the science of reading. And we don't want to go back through and belabor the point of what the differences are between the science of reading and whole language. We've done that before, but to summarize, we are now focused on phonemic awareness, phonics instruction, and vocabulary and knowledge building. And the idea is if you can build those pieces, work in some fluency, you'll have on-level readers who are capable of decoding words and drawing meaning from what they're actually learning. Our vision for literacy is through the equitable, effective instructional practices aligned to the science of reading, all students will become proficient. And when we say all, we mean all. That's one thing that we're focused on. We're talking to you tonight about equity in our literacy program because one of our other goals is to look at every initiative we have through the lens of equity. And when you look at some of the data that we have, you'll see that there is a gap between where we want to be. This line here represents minimum expectation for a healthy core. And you can see this is where we implemented the Fontes and Pinnell guided reading about 5 years ago. And this is last year's data. We don't have, or 2 years ago data. We don't have data from last year, obviously, because of the, the shutdown. But you can see that the gap actually got a little bit worse as we implemented the guided reading and benchmark program. The other thing is that this is our goal, way up here, 100%. This gap you'll find is typically are students who come from lower income housing. So our students that struggle with poverty. And if we are truly going to address and meet our goal, we have to figure out how to have a literacy program that is equitable to all students. And that's what we're going to talk about here tonight. All means all. And as a lot of the research that came out recently about the science of reading versus that whole language approach that we were implementing in this district basically says that if you use that whole language approach, your top kids that are exposed to higher level vocabulary are going to be okay. Really, the ones you're going to leave behind are the students who come from households that are from lower income. So, Dr. McMasters, you want to take?
Yeah, so kind of just jumping on to where Rob left off. So there's research by Hart and Risley that looked at the amount of words that students hear in homes that are high income and those from low income families. And we know that the experiences are different. So when you have parents, depending on, what jobs they're doing, what work they're doing, there's a lot of words, but it's the robustness of the vocabulary that's used in those households that creates what we call the 30 million word gap. So students from low income houses hear half the amount of words that students from higher income families hear by the age of 3. And so we know then there's 2 more years until they come to us. The idea being, it doesn't mean that those students aren't capable of learning or acquiring that background knowledge, vocabulary, and things like that. It's just that we may have catch-up to do for those students as they come to us in kindergarten. And we know that students who are behind when they come to us historically stay behind. So as we've talked about, if all means all, we have to make sure that we have ways of advancing all of our students, regardless of what their background is or their experiences or anything along those lines.
Angie, if I could jump in, I just want to make it important to the committee to understand this. You may be looking at that screen saying, well, that's not us. That's not our demographics. A decade ago, Indiana Area School District had 10% kids free and reduced lunch. You fast forward to last year, we're at almost 50%. Now, we're hovering around the 45% number right now, but I'd probably argue that could be worse after kids come back to school, maybe because the school kids, you have a third of our kids not in school because they chose to do cyber. Maybe they simply didn't do or complete the free and reduced lunch application. So our demographics have changed and are changing, and I think we need to change and have a model that's met and built to meet their needs and not the opposite. I'm sorry, Ange, go ahead.
No, you're fine. And I want to emphasize too that, students who do come from families that are of lower income doesn't make them bad families. It's just that the experiences are just different because of the circumstances. And so we know that without opportunity, all does not mean all. So this just highlights some of the short-term consequences of poor reading achievement that would affect our students here and now, including social and emotional well-being, which is one of the district's initiatives. So if we're focused on social and emotional well-being for students, reading achievement can be a factor in that, as well as increased risk of school dropout. So we're not providing what kids need now, but then the long-term consequences for our community is that there will be higher rates of unemployment. They're 10 times more likely to require government assistance if they're not able to break that cycle to develop proficient reading skills and have that opportunity. So we'll talk a little bit about the simple view of reading in the next slide, which basically highlights what is important to allow our students to develop the skills to be able to comprehend what they read. So what does any of this have to do with how we teach reading? So this highlights a timeline of opportunity. So if this was the ideal situation in the ideal world, these are the experiences that students would have coming to us from birth to age 3. They would be in a language-rich environment. There would be a lot of conversations, just students having the ability to hear the sounds of our language, with then moving into age 3 to 5, where they would have exposure to concepts of print, playing with the sounds of language through rhymes and songs and that continued oral language development, to then when they'd come to us in grade 3, where we would be able to continue that learning and progression. However, we don't have control over what happens birth to age 3 or what happens age 3 to 5. We have control once they come to us. And so what we have to have in place is a system of supports that allows us to advance our students who are above level, to meet the needs of the students who are on level, and then to close the gap for students who come to us behind where they should be. So if you look at our vision that's listed there, and we talk about the simple view of reading to try to keep this simple, decoding is what we really focused on last year with phonological awareness and phonics using Hegarty and Foundations, and really helping kids build their knowledge of sound-symbol relationships so they could decode and take words off the page, but also to be able to spell them. So those are your very basic decoding and encoding skills. So just reading the words on the page and being able to spell them. In addition to that, we also have to meet the language comprehension needs of our students, which ties into how they understand our spoken language. And so that includes background and vocabulary knowledge, as well as language structures. So CKLA, or Core Knowledge Language Arts, is one of the ways in which we are focused on helping to build and expand their language comprehension skills, which will lead to proficient reading comprehension. So the outcome of doing all of those things well, with reading the words on the page, but then also having the language skills to understand what the text is telling us, will allow students to be those proficient reading comprehenders. So I think you can probably think of anything that you can read. Just because you read it off of the page may not mean that you are able to explain it to someone if you don't have experience with what is in the content.
So Ange, if I could just jump in for a minute and talk
Yeah.
for a second about the language comprehension piece. When I think about it, I think about building, the structures in your brain, the hooks in your brain that you connect to. If you don't have anything in that has a hook to connect new knowledge to, you're not going to learn. So having those pieces, the language portion where we've learned words before we can pull them off the page and decoding, is so important for that outcome of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So recognizing that as we start to hear the sounds of our language, that we do develop those mental schema that allow us to then make further connections in our learning. Thanks, Shell, for pulling that out. That's really important as well. So when you look at the simple view of reading and you look at the formulas for when you have a robust language arts program that focuses on decoding as well as language comprehension, you're going to have robust reading comprehension outcomes. We know that any number times 0 equals 0. So if you have students who are great decoders but struggle with language comprehension, the outcome on reading comprehension tasks will be poor. If you have students who aren't able to decode and read the words off the page but have great language comprehension, your outcome when it comes to reading comprehension tasks will still be 0. If you have a little bit of decoding and great language comprehension, what you start to see is a little bit of understanding, but not robust understanding when it comes to the task of reading comprehension. So why core knowledge language arts? And this is one of my favorite quotes: knowledge is like Velcro, it sticks to prior knowledge. So we have to know something to do something. So just an overview of CKLA, and there's a lot of positives that correspond with the program, but these are the key points. So it maximizes vocabulary acquisition, and that occurs through a lot of different content areas, and we'll show you that roadmap as we go forward. It allows students to look at analyzing and expressing what they've learned through read alouds or reading text on their own to writing. It builds background knowledge for strong comprehension, because we know that comprehension cannot just be applied to any text. We have to know something to do something. So CKLA content is actually organized around the arts, social studies, and science. And then the last piece is it fosters wonderful conversationalists. So you'll see as we go forward that language comprehension or understanding conversation and digging deeper through a text that is heard out loud, that actually outpaces reading comprehension until students are in middle school. So they really are developing those oral language skills through interacting with each other. So this is a little bit difficult to see. So we have a copy of one from the curriculum company that we can share out. But just to kind of highlight what this looks like, if you were following along the orange path, that would be something that's more fiction related. The purple would be something nonfiction. So you'll see that from kindergarten through 5th grade within the knowledge strand, students are learning about stories in kindergarten, and then 1st grade that moves into fables and stories, fairy tales and tall tales, classic tales, poetry, to then moving into A Midsummer's Night's Dream in 5th grade. So you see how there's a spiral of knowledge that happens at each grade level. And that is across the board with the different topics that are covered, because then you see in the purple thread, taking care of the earth in kindergarten, to in first grade, the history of the earth, in second grade, cycles in nature. Then it goes to third grade and ecology, fourth grade is geology, and then fifth grade, chemical matter. And if you dig in a little bit more, you'll start to see that they cover topics such as astronomy, early world civilization, the ancient Roman civilization, and all of those focus on building from one another. So just as Shelley said, students are creating that their own files or mental schema, so that when they're making connections between what they've learned before to what they're learning in the next grade level, they will have already had some background knowledge and experience. So this is the part that I wanted to highlight about why read alouds are important when students are building knowledge and vocabulary. So until students are independently able to pull the words off of the page to read and understand, also recognizing the complexity of text for students, especially in the primary grades, we have to provide the conduit by which students are able to acquire vocabulary and knowledge that they're not yet able to read themselves. And so that's the purpose of the read alouds. And it occurs across, several of the grade levels, because we know how important it is to allow students to be exposed to content that would be considered absolutely above grade level if they were trying to read it independently. Also recognizing that right now, some of the text may be difficult for our students to read on their own independently, but that's because we're doing a lot of work within our system to allow them to decode the words on their own. So some of our students are still growing in that area.
And of course, high stakes tests, which we're not fans of, don't give a lot of time in those test questions dedicated to fictional stories. On the last PSSAs, there were questions about United States history, animal ecology, space, sciences, whereas the focus of the program we used to use, by contrast, focused on some of the writing prompts, like what makes grandmothers special, what could happen if everyone could bring their pets to school, what teddy bears look like, which I'm sure there's value in that. However, what core knowledge language arts does better than any other program out there is it really, really builds that and enriches that working vocabulary. So the students are hearing these words, understanding them used in language, and then when they see them and they can decode them because of our phonics and phonemic awareness efforts, it really results in true comprehension. This is the Ed Reports focus, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping on someone's toes. Is someone else supposed to take this one?
Nope, go for it.
All right, so this is the Ed Reports review of the core knowledge language arts. And it's off the charts. It outscored all of the other reading programs, specifically, though, again, in building knowledge. You can see there where the highest score is 32. CKLA scored, 30, or where it's 30, 30 across the board. That was at least 3 points higher than any other of the curricula programs that were reviewed. Sorry about that. That's my puppy. So, and again, this goes all the way up to 5th grade. It is the right thing to do when we're looking for that piece that builds the vocabulary, builds the knowledge, the background knowledge that's necessary for true comprehension. It was a no-brainer that CKLA is the program that was most rich in that area.
So these are some additional quotes that kind of highlight the importance of knowledge and background knowledge to teaching our students to be functioning members of society. So when they step out of our doors as graduates in 12th grade, they have every opportunity to be successful regardless of where they came from, so that we can help to maybe break the cycle of poverty for a family. But that's truly dependent upon what knowledge we're able to impart upon them so that when they graduate from us, they truly have an understanding to even do their civic duty and vote as we're going to do tomorrow. So that is another element as to why it's so important to have such a rich language curriculum that is truly remarkable. And I know Shelley and I get to experience it firsthand as parents, where I have one child telling me about vertebrates and invertebrates and whether their animal is a mammal. And then I have another one saying, hey, I tried sushi because did you know that your taste buds can change, because she's studying the 5 senses. And those are things that I just see my children becoming more linguistically aware. And Shelley, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything that you would like to add, in addition to glimpses, I think just in the classrooms from teachers and things principals have seen.
No, I'm happy to share. For anyone out there that's listening that knows my oldest son, he is a man of very few words. We've over the years had to kind of really prompt him to get to know what he's learning. And he's come home this year, and the topics that he's walking through the door just wanting to tell my entire family, our dinner conversations are robust. I'll be honest, I'm Googling things to see if they're accurate, and they are. He is talking about different religions and understanding of them and making connections. His retell of things that he's reading himself and things he's learning in the classroom is unbelievable. The vocabulary that he's using is really great. I know I've seen some other things that have come home with my other son on the human body and the language that he's learning and connecting, the circulatory system and the stuff that they are creating, the students are creating to talk about it's really awesome. And I know that they're going to keep building on that knowledge as they go. I've been in classrooms just listening to that discussion has been wonderful, because I know prior to being a school psychologist, I taught for many years. And something that I noticed over the years was that students were coming in not knowing the foundational science and social studies information. So, they would get to a level where they're trying to learn some of that content and they had nothing to connect it to. So not only are we building, knowledge on many other things, but that science and social studies, especially to allow our students as they're getting into the high school levels to connect knowledge to.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on there that when we're talking about equity again, CKLA does an outstanding job of building that vocabulary and exposing the students who are behind to these words, and at the same time pushes the students who do have those skills already to go even further. The read alouds are specifically designed, these are the ones where the teachers read to the students. They're specifically designed to be 2 to 3 grade levels above level, so that the students are exposed verbally, orally to those higher level vocabulary words over and over again, so that they can hear them and they're exposed to them and they see them in writing. And so it's specifically designed to not only address, the top students, but all students.
So yes, I'll take this one. So this is an example from Natalie Wexler's The Knowledge Gap, which is a fabulous read. It drove me into Edie Hirsch's Why Knowledge Matters, and on my wish list is How to Educate a Citizen. And so this kind of highlights why knowledge and vocabulary matter. So if you have background knowledge, when you're reading something, which this is a paragraph from a passage that was given to 3rd graders on a standardized test, if you have background knowledge and vocabulary, you're going to read it as it's presented on the orange side. If you are a child that maybe you can read the words off the page, but if you don't have those phonological hooks or the background knowledge that Shelley highlighted, then it may look more like what's on the green, where you're missing such key pieces of information that no matter how well you can read the words on the page, it's still going to impact your reading comprehension, which is why that element is so important. And I see that Dr. Runge added a comment in the chat, and I don't know if he's willing to unmute and share with the group.
Sure. It looks like I was unmuted. Very nice presentation. I'm just going to summarize for those who maybe didn't see it in the chat. It was interesting to see Rob Heinrich present the Ed Reports website, because actually that's exactly where I went to a few days ago when I wanted to find out independently information about the core curriculum that's being used, because it was one that I was not terribly familiar with. But the Foundations Integrity I'm absolutely familiar with. So the combination of those two, which I'm again very familiar with, and the CKLA, which I'm not familiar with, but Ed Reports, which is an independent reviewer and tends to be top notch. The combination of those three put in the hands of teachers and parents state-of-the-art materials to help students acquire the literacy skills that every student needs. And so, as I said, just in conclusion with my comment in the chat, fidelity of implementation, as with anything, is going to be key to make sure that teachers and parents are using the resources that the district has purchased. But all in all, just again, as an outside observer looking in at these three sets of materials, outstanding decisions made by the teachers, the administrators, and the board.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Runge. We appreciate that. So this is a quick glance, because I know at this time last year, I remember sitting at the table with the board reviewing beginning of the year data with where we were starting. And then we had that lovely presentation middle of the year, which we never got to wrap up. And so I think all of us were kind of sitting on the edge of our seats a little bit, waiting to see what our beginning of the year data looked like. And so I want to explain this because we only have 2 years of the Dibbles/Acadience data, because prior to that, we didn't use the fancy system that generated reports. And so what this shows you is, first of all, if you just see blue, that means that there wasn't comparison data. So in kindergarten, we know that's their first year this year. In 5th grade, we did not have a composite score. So that data wasn't available. But what you see in grades 1 through 4, the purple represents where our students were at the beginning of the year in their previous grade level. So what you see for grade 1 is purple, is where those kids were at the start of the year in kindergarten. And so any of those blue chunks that you see behind the purple shows the growth that students have made with this beginning of the year benchmark. And as I've been looking at this and kind of thinking about, when we assessed this year versus last year, because it was later, we still are in the middle of a pandemic. And so there's a multitude of other factors that could have really impacted and had with the COVID slide and all of those things. So despite those struggles, students are still moving forward in their literacy skills. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. The blue line highlights 80% at or above, which would be our healthy tier 1. And then we know that to get any, to move students further along, that's where our tiered interventions and supports come into play at tier 2 and tier 3. But we really want to get our students moving to at least 80% proficiency for the majority of our students with just our general instruction. And so we're moving in a fabulous direction, and I'm just really excited to see where things can take us. And I think that, Dr. Runge brings up a great point, that it's important for us to do check-ins and support and coach teachers in the implementation of the programs to make sure that we're giving our system an opportunity to work effectively.
And I would submit, sorry to interrupt, but I was told by Mr. Schroth that I could do that. I would also just remind everybody that in a typical spring to fall, we have what's commonly referred to as the summer slide. But this past spring to the current fall, most researchers that I've been reading have been referring to it as the summer avalanche. Where because of we laugh, but I mean, in all seriousness, the students in a typical year, they'll lose a little bit. by the start of the school year. But given the circumstances, it would not be surprising to see an avalanche of a drop off. And if I'm interpreting these data correctly, not only did you not see an avalanche, but you actually saw improvements over the previous year. And it's not to be disrespectful of the gains that were achieved in previous years, but this is rather remarkable to see approximately 60 to 65% average across the board in all the grades. That's pretty impressive, especially given the summer avalanche that we all experienced.
Yeah, and I
agree.
think we
Thank
were
you,
all
Sarah.
holding our breath. Sorry, Mr. Heinrich, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to point out that this also illustrates the point that, this problem that we had before was not a teacher problem. We have excellent teachers, outstanding teachers who care about kids, go above and beyond for kids. They just didn't necessarily have the right tools in their hands. And we believe that, the action you took, almost 2 years ago now, put us on the right path to where we can see these kind of growths despite, the COVID slide or the summer avalanche. So, we're very excited and about where we're headed. I'm sorry, Answers. You had something else to say?
No, that was all here.
Okay. Well, that concludes our presentation. Anybody have any questions?
I'll go to the committee first. Does the committee have any questions or comments?
I do. Angela, when was that data collected? How early in the school year?
So we actually just wrapped up, and the data have kind of just stopped trickling in from the masses. We had a couple of makeups that were still happening. So end of October, we just closed that window. So we really tried to give as much time as we could to let students get situated with the new circumstances and everything. So significantly later than where it was collected last year.
But still within the reasonable time frame given standard practices.
Correct, yes. And a later start to the school year because we didn't start as early this year either.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Uta, Cinda, do you have anything for this?
No, I just hope we can find a way to celebrate the success that the teachers and the students are having with this program.
I'd like to point out that you are still maintaining the right-hand side of that chart where the goal is 100%. I think that's what we have to do. We have to try to get all these kids reading at these high levels. So I'm anxious to see what a normal year looks like. That's for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Walter, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Walter. In an email to the board today, you mentioned that I had done some research. That's probably been 6 or 8 years, maybe even longer ago on.
You were 12 at the time, Walter.
What's that?
You were 12 at the time.
Yeah, probably. But I did look at the PSA numbers over about a 6-year period, and they've remained in that 70 to 75% range for the reading consistently, even back then. So I'm really excited to see that maybe this program actually has a chance of moving us off of that area that we've sort of been stuck at, and certainly echo the comments that maybe we'll see even better results once we get into a regular year. But that was kind of been always my concern. It seems like we got stuck somewhere between 70-75%, and we're just never able to move that needle. I'll be much happier if we get stuck somewhere around 95% than we are where we are now. So, but thanks again to everybody for their work and support.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Ms. Harley. I'm sorry.
I'd like to point out pile on Walter's comments that we've gone from 10% free and reduced to over 50% free and reduced. And from what Angela was showing us, the kids that are operating in the poorer households have troubles. And on some ways, maintaining 75% was a success, but we're the only chance these kids have. We're the only chance, and we got to do better. We got to do better. Each individual kid, you can't line up a classroom with 20 kids and pick which 5 aren't going to read by the time they get to 12th grade. That's not what we're here for. So I'm cheering you on. I hope for great success. And please let's move this needle.
Yes, sir. Well said. And I appreciate that. And I do want to say this, that we had a lot of reading experts really look at what we were doing and advise us. And, you know, some of the top reading experts in the state, most of the top reading experts in the state are telling us that what we're doing in Indiana is the envy of the state. And really, if we're going to get serious about, you know, moving that needle, like you said, and getting that 30% of kids to read proficiently, you know, we're doing the right thing. I've also included in the agenda hyperlinks to a lot of other studies and research that you can peruse at your leisure some other time, though, not tonight. And that's it, Mr. Harley. I want to thank the MTSS team for coming and doing all that work. I know it was a lot of work that they put together. I appreciate that. And I thank Mr. Runge for his time and his comments, too.
Tammy, do you have anything to add to this? You've been very quiet tonight.
Mike, Tom, this is Walter. A question for Mike. Is there, I mean, that was a great presentation. I know it will be available through the website through this meeting, but I'm wondering whether or not there's a way we shouldn't maybe highlight it and maybe in the next newsletter, not related to COVID, but more of a regular newsletter, we should highlight a link to this information to the parents and community that are interested in understanding what we're actually trying to do here.
Yes, sir. What we've done, sir, that Ange and her team have worked on a newsletter to go out to families to start explaining, make sure we're re-explaining what we're doing here in the district, because this is something that's really life-changing and important to us. So what we'll do is by the end of this week, send out a newsletter to families so they understand it. And again, the only thing I'd like to reiterate before we put a closure to Mr. Harley is how grateful we are for not only your commitment to believing in this vision and philosophy and going with the evidence and the research, but also how grateful we are for our teachers and our students and our families for understanding this and willing to make the changes that are necessary to get all kids where they need to be. I know there's two things people hate: change and the way things are, but we wouldn't do this flippantly. We wouldn't do this without the evidence. And there's some areas that we need to improve. Like I need to work and do a better job giving them some time and working on their schedules and getting better in that area. But long story short is what we're doing matters. What we're doing is going to make a difference in the lives of kids. And we have to commit to the process. And too often in education, we look for that quick ailment. We look for that quick cure for any ailment. Or the education field often represents the fashion industry where things come and go in fads. What we're doing is based on research. What we're doing is based on evidence. It's here to stay. It's going to stay. And our job and our moral obligation to not only our kids, but also our teachers is to provide them with the tools, professional development, and supports they need. So what that says is we've done a lot of that with regards to resources and staffing. But another thing I'm going to bring forward at policy and personnel, there's a small little piece in the contract that talks about department heads. I think if we're going to get serious about data and using data to really drive our instruction, have time to really look at everything, I'm going to bring up next week the idea how we can use department heads at the grade level, at the K to 5 grade levels, to help continue our work here. Because as you'll see, everyone's doing a great job. And again, we're appreciative of everyone's work, and we'll get there together, sir.
Okay, Mike, thanks for that. But we certainly don't want to rest on intentions here. We want to see boots on the ground and kids reading at grade level and beyond.
Absolutely.
Good luck. Go
That's
get
all
it.
we have.
Anything for the good of the order?
2.5 hours. That was a quick one tonight, sir.
Oh, yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, because this is a passion of mine as well, and sort of in my wheelhouse. So I appreciate, Mike, you and your team looking at the evidence and reaching out to experts. And I accompanied you on a visit to Bentley or Bentworth Elementary, and I was just blown away by meeting Pam Kastner, who is one of the reading experts in the state who believes in the science of reading. So I just appreciate you and your team taking us down this road.
And Tom, I swear I'll shut up, Mr. Harley, right after this. But Miss Leeper's right though. Like, look what we're doing with IEP, the partnership with her folks coming in, her team coming in, helping our kids. What you're seeing is systems intertwined and working together, not in isolation. So it's all part of the recipe. When you talk about how we make lasagna, these are all the different ingredients how we make our lasagna. So you'll see things working in concert, not in isolation. That's what a good, productive system should look like. And I just want to expand upon that because that wouldn't be possible without Ms. Leeper's involvement as well. Lastly, Ms. Harley, if you want to see a great video, Why Teaching Reading is Teaching Social Studies is a great video that we added there. You would love it, and it does a nice job, really explaining what we're trying to do here. So I'll shut up with that, sir.
No, you can't shut up yet, Mike. Let's drop back to item number 1, the Small Business Incubator that Steve Osmond was going to present.
Okay.
Okay. He's going to send us an email. We'll bring this to the board on our next meeting. What we're looking for is people get involved with reaching out to these companies. This is probably the third in a series of studies that the Small Business Administration has done, Small Business Incubator has done for us, and it should wrap it up. So we'll have a little more explicit instructions on that at the board meeting. So
yes,
you can move this to the board meeting, and we'll put maybe we can get Steve's computer to work. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we go home now?
I'm good. You're good, sir.
Walter?
I'm good.
Okay. Let's go home. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.